On January the 12th, when the director of DMV said that he had information about certain 900 and something people voted in the last election who were dead, I asked him, please produce the data and records that you provided to SLED concerning the 900 people. In addition, please provide me the methodology and the verification process for this. I also asked him that if he gave any additional information to the Attorney General, that I wanted that too. All of that clearly is within the proper purview of a Freedom of Information Act request. So, again, deadline not met, but after the deadline, I get a letter that says, you know, I asked for 900 names, can't come on a piece of paper, not unless they're really, really small. But basically, I didn't get the names, I didn't get the methodology, I didn't get the information. I did not get anything but a letter from the director basically telling me that he understood that I wanted this information, but I guess he's the police of what he can give or not give out right now. He sent me a summary total about that, and he said in there that DMV had reported its findings to the Election Commission in December and asked that they report the correct numbers to the media. That is one agency of government, DMV, asking another agency of government to report the correct information to the media, not even to the public, but to the media, okay? Then he goes on to say that when the Election Commission did not report the new findings after several weeks, again, this is his artificial timetable, that the DMV executive director correctly, or let me say this the way he said, reported the correct numbers. Said he reported the correct numbers. Well, now we know that they weren't correct. Not only were they not correct, he still refused to give me the 900 names or the methodology or the verification. Without a FOIA request, I asked the Election Commission if they would give it to me. They have. And what we're going to find out is that the information that the director of DMV provided was not correct at all and just happened to come out in a day or two's time of when the governor's office wanted to have a big press conference about this. This is not an administration that's all about transparency if they're not willing to give this information out and, again, willing to hide behind things and hide things. So, not that, you know, I just want to cry wolf about one or two things. I tell you, it's a pattern because when I asked for the personnel file of the head of LLR, who has been nominated to be the head of DHEC, I promptly received it. But guess what? There's virtually nothing in it, including what's not in it that you would think would be in almost anybody's personnel file is a job application. There is not a job application of the current director of LLR in her personnel file. And I'm just telling you, for an administration who says that they are fully transparent, number one, they're hiding emails and they aren't coming clean about that. Number two, when I ask them for the names that they've publicly used as a basis for a press conference, they won't give those to me. When I ask them for the methodology of how they determined that this was all correct, even though they asked the Election Commission to find out what was correct, they wouldn't wait on them. No, and I'll tell you what, they didn't give the Election Commission those names either. They're keeping those names pretty close to the vest because I think most of those people are alive. And finally, we're not getting the full measure of what's being requested that we're going to need for confirmation on this all-important new director of DHEC. So that's not going to keep me from continuing to ask, and I'm going to ask it until I get it in exactly plain legalese English that they can understand. But if they really are about transparency and letting the public know what it is that they are putting forward or what they're hiding, they will give us this information which we're entitled to.
Senator from Spartanburg, what purpose do you rise?
Senator from Orangeburg would yield for a friendly question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, are you aware that when we're looking at the voter list, and we're able to purchase voter lists for voters and to use for our campaigns or for our constituent service, are you aware in the new areas that I picked up, I got some files that I purchased, they were up to date, but I found 8 or 9 people that I knew passed away over a year ago. Is there anything that we can do? I've got some staff looking into it. Would you join me in doing something about keeping those records up to date? Because it is kind of frustrating that they're not kept current. And I just wondered if there's something that you and I could work on together to try to help those records stay current, the voter records.
I'd be glad to, because I'll tell you that for every possible reason you can think of, there is no reason to keep a person on the list any longer than they should be. And obviously we all would agree that once a person passes away, they should come off the list. And whether they should monitor the DHEC records of death, or whether obituary pages or whatever. But I mean, just like you said, you purchased the list for the purpose of contacting new potential constituents. You don't want to be wasting now 45-cent stamps trying to contact people that have been deceased, because not only did you waste that money, but it also sort of potentially makes you look bad in the eyes of the family who would get that letter and say, well, this guy who seeks to represent me doesn't even know that granddaddy passed away. So, you know, the other thing is, you know, oftentimes we send letters to people that may be in a certain area. We don't want to send it to families that have had a loss like that. So for a lot of reasons, it would be very helpful to everybody if that list could be kept as current as possible. Well, I agree with you. But now, it's a long stretch from there to say that any of those people that you found on that list have been voting.
And notice I refrained from saying that. Right. I wasn't trying to insinuate that. But maybe in Judiciary Committee today, could you and I just speak briefly for a few minutes? Sure. And the final question I have is, when you mentioned the job application, I believe there were 3 finalists, one of them being from Spartanburg. Were there job applications for the other 2 finalists, or were you able to ask? Did you go down that road?
I haven't gone. As far as I know right now, we give deference to the board on the hiring process, but we do have the confirmation process. So I was not asking about any of the other applicants or the other finalists. I was only asking about the eventual nominee or selected person. And note that it's part of, because part of what is being told to us is that her qualifications in part come from her successful running of the LLR agency. And so I asked for their LLR records to see if there was anything in the personnel file that would be important for us to know as we go through the confirmation process. And all I'm saying is, and I'm telling you this, I got a very quick response. It was very prompt. In fact, the most prompt response of any of the requests that I've made. So I have no qualm with the response or the promptness of it. I'm just suggesting that you would think in a personnel file there'd be a job application. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that, and I'll stand to be corrected about that if that's not the file that job applications are kept in. Maybe they're kept in the job application file and not the personnel file, but I thought it would have been in there.
Will you share that information with us when you find it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Berkeley, what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, would the senator yield for a question?
Sure.
Did you know that the Transportation Committee meets tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and did you know that we're going to have Colonel Shwedo give us some testimony before the Senate Transportation Committee? Just one of these did-you-know questions.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope that some of my fellow colleagues who are on transportation might ask him about this, and since he's going to testify, ask him about how this information was so correct at one time and now appears not to be. But thank you.
I believe that the Colonel Shwedo should be prepared to answer any questions that are asked. So any of the members may want to communicate with members of the Senate Transportation Committee to ensure that the right questions are asked tomorrow.
My questioner right here. He said he'd be there.
But thank you.
Okay.
Senator Malexian, what purpose do you rise?
Would the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
So, do you remember here when we were discussing the voter machines, the senator from there were several senators in here, we talked about the possibility of a communication between the Department of Vital Statistics or the coroner's office in each county reporting to the Election Commission people who were deceased at the time they answered the call, that one of the things?
You know, I don't remember that specifically, but as far as I'm concerned, once a person is deceased, that ought to be communicated to all state agencies. They shouldn't be receiving any kind of benefits after their death. They shouldn't have a driver's license renewed after their death. You name it, any thing that has to do with them once they pass away, we should immediately get that to all of our state agencies so that the appropriate steps can be taken to make sure that there's nothing going on with activity going on their account after they pass away.
I agree. Well, at that time, I was trying to find a way to get that to happen at the time of a death when the coroner went on the call and signed a death certificate that either the coroner or the Department of Vital Statistics would relay the person's information to the Elections Commission, either the state or the county. And there was some drawbacks to that, saying that it was going to be too much problems and stuff like that. But I wish that, I hope that when it comes up again, that we'll get the support to try to create a better voter list.
Well, that sounds like a very reasonable solution. I appreciate that, and you're following up on that.
Senator Charleston, what purpose you rise?